the Check-In and Chat podcast, brought to you by Big Bear Marketing and the Hotel Growth Framework. Welcome to the Check-In and Chat podcast. I'm here with Neely Khan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so Neely is the founder of Kahani, and they are a story content for hospitality and themed attraction brands. So for people who are listening, who don't know anything about you, who are you and how did you end up working in and in around content and AI?
I love this question, but I'm still rehearsing a way to kind of explain my sort of background and my history in less than 3 minutes. So you'll have to bear with me. So my background has very much always been deeply rooted in story. So I've always been a writer. That's been my bread and butter ever since I was very young. I was actually one of those annoying kids in school who always knew what they wanted to do. And when I was younger, I remember writing stories to help me remember things like difficult mathematic equations or elements of the periodic table. So I learned from a very young age the magical sort of power of storytelling and how it makes everything so much more exciting. So I always knew that this was something that I wanted to pursue in my career. In my early 20s, I was working in many hospitality jobs and trying to balance that with being a single mom at the same time. And then it occurred to me that it was very much wanting to come out of victim mode because, I was single parenting. I wanted my passion to actually manifest into something that would be able to look after myself and my daughter. So I thought, why not combine all my experience in hospitality and my love for hospitality with content writing, storytelling. And that's when I set up as a freelancer, and I was a freelancer for about 8 years. I specialized in stories specifically for the hospitality industry. And about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I acquired a creative agency in the Midlands after many years of successfully freelancing. And now we have AWC, which is the name of my agency. And we have recently founded this new service, this framework, like you've just explained. It's called Kahani. And I'm really excited to tell you more about it because it is a first in this country. I have checked. And what we do is we create story-led content for hospitality and themed attraction brands. But then we also make sure that it's all optimized for AI visibility and GEO. So brands are getting found by AI and then chosen by human beings.
Yeah. At what point did you, so like I say, going from a storyteller, copywriting background, hospitality, at what point did you realize that it's kind of turned a little bit, or is turning, or has turned a bit of a corner, so that all of a sudden now actually it's like AI is the thing? Like, what moment did you go, that's what people need?
Well, that's a great question. That's actually a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. At what point did you feel the term? I think for many of us, the AI sort of the way it's kind of catapulted and popularized, I feel like it's happened very much so in the last maybe 2 to 3 years where everybody's talking about it, which is so interesting because AI has obviously been around since the 60s, but obviously in businesses, we're speaking about it so much more, especially in the last 2 to 3 years. And I think the one question I was getting, so much of, and I'm sure many writers, copywriters, and designers will be able to relate is, oh, are you afraid that AI is going to replace you and take your job? And I was being asked this question maybe 5 or 6 times a day. And that's when I first started thinking, okay, this is something that people are really kind of wanting to speak about and it's becoming relevant. But I've always been the kind of a person where first of all, I don't believe anything can replace human talent. But also, rather than running away from trends that others may perceive as a threat, I thought, how can we work with this? Because clearly people want it. They want it. They want to talk about it. They want to use it. So how can we package it up in a way where we're not losing the soul of who we are and teaching people how to use it intelligently?
You said something, we've spoken before about this briefly, and you said something in that conversation which kind of stuck with me as like, I kind of, it's just stuck with me what it was. And we were discussing at the time, it was how hotels, hospitality brands need to be found on AI, how it's going. And you said it's like, actually, there's one thing being found on AI and getting cited and things like, but are you actually showing up, telling your story, or is AI dictating it to you? And that stuck with me when you said that. And I was like, and that's quite interesting. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
It's such an important point, right? Because I think the whole world and their dog right now are talking about, AI visibility. AI visibility need to be cited by ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, et cetera. And absolutely, yes, you do. But very few people are talking about what happens after that. So if ChatGPT or Claude happens to mention your hotel brand to a prospect who's looking for a 3-night stay with their partner in London, and Claude or ChatGPT or whatever mentions your brand, and then they visit your website or whatever page that LLM has recommended to them, if your website is shit, if your copy is bad, if the design is crap, if the booking experience sucks, then that guest is not going to book with you. And no matter how much LLMs recommend you, if anything, it could be more damaging to your brand. So I think that part of getting chosen by human beings, and it's just a point of always remembering that actually it's still human beings who make that end decision, who make that decision to part with their hard-earned money and invest in brand. And I think that's the key part that so many people, so many brands are forgetting to address.
Do you think that's the bit where like being blissfully unaware of it, maybe there's actually a little bit of confusion around it? Cause whenever something new comes along, especially like marketers ruin everything anyway, and it's like, we found on AI, must have found on AI. And it's like, and yes, obviously more people are using that for research and things, but it's maybe not the be all and end all. And I've been sort of banging a drum myself. It's like it's great. AI's, you need to be concerned with it and look after it, but it's not a magic. Like everyone expects the new thing to be the magic bullet, and then like you said there, and I think it's a really good point. Is you can do all of that work, fire as much traffic as you like to your website, but if you've not even got your story or what you stand for, your messaging, your visual, all the other bit, it sort of falls flat on its face. So do you think there's a little bit of, is it naivety? I don't know, what would you call it, but I think jumping on the bandwagon sometimes good, but I don't know. Do you think you should? So I
Yeah.
guess the question probably would be is like, if you were a marketing team for a hotel or
Mhm.
hospitality, where would the importance of AI come on your scale of things to do? How prioritized should that be?
Yeah. So to answer the first part, do I think it's naivety and maybe a lack of education? I do. Do you remember the days of, keyword stuffing? I'm sure you do because you've been in this space probably for longer than I have. And, back in the day, I say back in the day, but it was only like what, 10 years ago? When a lot of SEO experts or whatever, they would say things like, okay, these are your keywords, these are your key phrases, write a bunch of content. Doesn't have to read particularly well as long as you can cram in as many words and phrases. And that was bad practice, just like only wanting to optimize for AI and then doing nothing else to beautify your hotel brand. That is also bad practice because in both ways, you lose the soul and the story and the humanness of the brand. So, in terms of when do hotels need to start thinking about, okay, now is the time for us to think about our AI visibility? Everything starts with research, right? So, it very much depends on the brand too. So, we have to think about, okay, who are these guests who are using LLMs to look up ideas for romantic getaways or family fun trips with their kids, because actually it is a certain demographic that uses LLMs more. If you are, catering for a different clientele, say you have an ultra luxury resort and you have guests who are really looking for an exceptionally tailored experience and they're willing to spend a lot of money, then they won't just be using LLMs to make that decision. And I still think even sort of Gen Zers and the younger demographic, the conversation will probably start on ChatGPT, Claude for ideas, but they will still then visit either your Instagram page, your TikTok page, or your website. So I think it depends on your demographic. It depends on, everything starts with really getting to know your audience, your target audience, where they hang out, as every marketer says. And if via your research you do find that the majority of your guests are going to LLMs first, which in many cases will be the case, by the way, then you start thinking about, okay, this is how we boost our AI visibility. But the wonderful thing about all of this is when you optimize for AI, your GEO strategy will naturally help alongside what you're doing for your website, your SEO strategy. Everything is so beautifully intertwined. So it's not a case of I'll do this part because the other parts aren't important. It all kind of works together.
Do you think so AI really, like I say, it's not just keywords. It's not, you can't, you can game it to a point, but again, it's not necessarily telling your story or doing those things. So where do you think people are going wrong in what they're doing to try and optimize for the LLMs?
I think your point about it not being just keywords, that's a great point. I think it's become common knowledge now. A lot of people already know this and are talking about this, that search behavior itself has changed. So when guests are looking for ideas and recommendations, they're not necessarily typing things like Hotel Rome into their LLM. They're writing long, nuanced sentences with quirks and details, like, "This is my budget. I want to surprise my wife in Paris for a trip to Paris for a 3-night stay. This is my budget. We want to live somewhere that's very close to the city. We are both interested in this kind of music, etc., etc. What would you recommend?" So it's a lot more detailed and nuanced. So using a keyword strategy alone obviously won't help in that sort of scenario. What we recommend to our clients and what we do for our clients when we are working on their copy for AI visibility is something called semantic layering. So we take a look at all of the key questions and the key the intent of the audience. What is it that they're actually looking for? What kind of emotions do they want to feel? What kind of experiences do they want to have? And then we write the content based on that. And the idea is really to have it very as detailed as you can. I think, to answer your question, the biggest mistake I see people making, and have seen people making this mistake for many years, is keeping everything far too generic. This wasn't working even pre LLM days. And now that we're in LLM days, it's an even bigger issue. So if you have a luxury hotel, what does luxury mean? This is what we call empty adjectives, right? Because what luxury for me might look like something completely different than what it does to you. And not only do human beings struggle with that because they can't visualize what you're trying to say to them, LLMs don't like that too. They need to see very specific language patterns, adjectives, specifics. So that is by far the biggest mistake, is this generic, boring, bland language, luxury, beautiful, nestled, all these home away from home type of copy, you know?
So I totally agree, and yeah, words out of my mouth with exactly what you said with the luxury thing. It's like, we're luxury. It's like luxury is correct. Like, there's luxury. It's like, but you can say you're luxury, but what does that feel like? Like, what does that actually mean? Because it's getting to a point where everyone all of a sudden is like, we're a luxury hotel. It's like, are you though? Because to me, like, I've seen quite a few hotels, like, luxury's a good thing, like, you can't all be luxury. And when you're all selling the same dream, it's different. So where do you think that's like, so the real advice there is obviously to get away from the generic, from the, and a mistake that we see quite often is like you have these sometimes amazing properties, but no one's really invested, like, what is our story, Like, what is it? Because even if you've got a brand new boutique hotel that you're just kitting out fresh, it's like, but there's decisions going into all of those things, from the decor to the rooms to everything. So how do you encourage, or what would your advice be to hotels, like, to not be generic?
What would my advice be to hotels to not be generic? I think everybody talks about wanting a point of difference. So but very few people maybe understand how to implement that into their brand. It's like that old saying of everybody wants to go to heaven, nobody wants to die, right? So everybody talks, even with us, when I have clients approaching us, one of the first things they say is, we want to be different to Bob down the road. We want a clear point of difference. Now, the only way really you can do that is by one of the main ways, should I say, you can do that is via story. And I know I speak about story a lot, but storytelling really does give you that main point of difference. So if you start off by thinking about your hotel brand, what does it stand for and what are you offering as an experience? So away from the amenities, away from the sea views, what are you actually enabling for guests? Is it a break from the daily grind of city life? Is it finally an opportunity to spend time with their children? Is it a chance to sit down and get to work if they're a corporate guest? Think about what you're actually offering. What is that specific guest story, and weave that into your brand narrative. And I'd love to give you an example of why storytelling is so, so powerful, not even as a point of difference, but also as a point of revenue. So you might have heard of this experiment before. It was carried out by two journalists by the name of Robert Walker and Joshua Glenn. And you'll have to forgive me because I don't remember the exact numbers, but they wanted to prove the economical value of storytelling. This was back in the late 90s, I believe. So what they did is they bought 100 trinkets. So really sort of small here and there objects like a broken snow globe, a golden coin, a pencil sharpener. And they bought the trinkets for, I think it totaled up to less than $100. And then what they did was they hired a bunch of expert story writers, and they said to these story writers, right, can you please write us a story, an engaging narrative for each one of these trinkets, for each one of these everyday, not so extravagant products. After these story writers wrote these little mini stories, Joshua and Robert listed these items that cost them no more than $100 on eBay. And maybe we can share a link when we're sharing this podcast to the actual story, because the profit and the money they generated off the back of that just by adding story was astronomical. I think it was something like 50 times the worth of what they bought their products for. So, again, it just goes to show that storytelling is not just a pretty thing to have. A lot of people see it as a soft skill. A lot of people think, it just sounds nice, but it helps with your AI visibility. LLMs like it. And you can actually increase your rates via a storied experience, as long as you do so ethically, of course. So I would always start there.
I think it's a great point. It's like I say, it's a great story as well, and it does go to show that thing.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at sort of trends that have happened or are happening and have happened, it's even things like, if you've got like a restaurant, and it's like, oh, we sell whatever food, the best steak dinner, for example, and it's like that. It's like, and then the next restaurant's like, yeah, well, our steak is homegrown on here. It's filter fork, everything. And it's like, it's the same thing. It tastes probably, well, maybe better, but negligibly. It's like, but it's that story, isn't it? That sort of sells people on it. So when
It's effect, right? Like the Marks and Spencers thing.
yes,
They've got it spot on.
yeah, and I think it's quite interesting, like when you sort of bring up those other industries as well. It's like, in particular, hotels and hospitality industries, I think, are very inward thinking. And if you actually look at what is going on in the world of e-commerce or consumer goods, whatever, it's like there's so much you can learn, isn't there? And I think a lot of that is filtering in. I think, even things like the John Lewis Christmas ads, all of a sudden you got like hotels sort of trying to capture the same sort of thing. Quite
Great.
often I feel like they're trying to replicate something rather than do their own thing. But you got to start somewhere, I guess.
Inspiration, I guess. I do
Yeah.
like that, though. I think the best inspiration sometimes is from outside the most obvious places and outside the industry.
When I think like the other half of our business, we do sort of branding and logos and things as well. And we always say like stories, like you have to have your story, you have to know what you're doing. And then off the back of that then obviously influences the messaging that you should be talking about. So let's say there's a hotel out there, maybe watching this, who are just like, actually, we're not quite sure about our messaging and stuff. So they'll contact you and they'll be like, you seem to know your onions, you know what we're doing. So where would you start? So if I came to you today, like, where would you start to help me unpick that?
That's a great question as well. So how do we unpack this? Okay, so this is probably one of the most common popular services that we offer, and it is so beautifully different for every brand. But everything starts with really getting to know the brand, the people behind the brand, why the hotel was created, why it stands as a brand, what it stands for, who the audience is, who the guests are. So really getting into the soul of what this brand is about, as most projects like these would begin anyway. After we have had that discovery phase, we're very, very good at, and this is something I don't claim to be good at very many things, but this is something that I've always kind of had a natural eye for. Once we get those answers, receive those answers from a hotel brand, we will then listen back to that conversation or read back to our notes. And thankfully, LLMs make note taking a lot easier. And then we will find the common threads. So the common threads won't be something so obvious like we said earlier, luxury, luxury, luxury. We will find, okay, what are the sentences that this person kept saying? What are the key things that are really important to them? So I'll give you an example. We were working with a lovely micro resort brand in the US a couple of months ago. And they are inspired by this Japanese philosophy of ukiyo, which is all about being present in the moment. It's about tranquility. It's about mindfulness. So when we spoke with the founder and the team, what he kept saying repeatedly was it's all about wanting to disconnect, from everyday life so that I can, focus on the things that I don't usually have the time to focus on. So it was inspired by a trip to Japan that he made himself, and he really wanted to recreate that experience for his guests. So we thought, okay, presence, mindfulness, introspective thoughts, those kind of things are important to this person, to this brand. And then what we did was, because also remember, your story, your brand story doesn't necessarily have to be your founding story. In fact, what we do more of is we create worlds for our clients. So we'll maybe create a fiction story inspired by the values, the story of the founders themselves, and then create a beautiful fiction world, whatever that may be. And we'll write a version of that story. We'll really, really think about the theming, the words we're using, what we like to call as writers the semantic field of that copy. So semantic field means, okay, these are the kind of words we use for this client. These are the kind of sentence structures we use. This is what we don't do. And then that story becomes the North Star for all their branding and all their marketing. So we'll write one long version of the story, a couple of shorter versions for them to repurpose because they'll be using them in different ways. We will teach them how to embed this story into all of their marketing and branding. And then we will teach them how to activate that story at their actual hotel. So how do you then bring this to life? How does every single bit of messaging and communication reflect back to this story? So I hope that answers your question, because I feel like it's quite complex, but the best way to think about it is that the story is created off the back of these values and these repetitive ideas that we hear. And then that acts like the North Star for all the branding and the messaging.
Yeah, I love that. And I think quite often I guess talking from experiences that I've seen, it's like you sometimes have some wonderful branding with wonderful messaging, which sadly just sits in the set of brand guidelines and doesn't no one really adheres to. So and that, like I said, that's the important thing of like, don't hide the story, don't bury it in a document somewhere. And really what that should do, I guess, is all of them, whether it's social media or whatever, emails or whatever I'm doing, that's got to tie back to that story, hasn't it? It's like everything's got to be aligned. And I wonder whether quite a lot of hotels don't see the value in that. Which I think when you talk it through, that's like, actually it's everything. It's like from not just, we think our customer is so and so. It's like, yeah, but who are they? It's like, and hotels have this wonderful pool of data. It's like, if you've been operating for a few years, it's like you can tear. Like, I'm a data geek. It's like, tear that data apart. Who is it? Where are they from? Why are they coming? And just even those like silly questions, like as they check, it's like, why have you booked your stay here today? Just like really learn. Exactly. And I think there's a massive missed opportunity to learn something about those people that then goes into the story to do that. So it's an interesting space. I think hotels, brands, whoever it is, story is massively important. I think everyone's got one. And like you say, you don't necessarily have to create one for the sake of create one, but there is a story in every decision and everything that gets made. So yeah, it's quite good. So I guess we're sort of coming to the end of the questions that I did have. We've kind of gone a bit off piece, but that's fine.
We have, as is always the case.
Yeah. So who is it? So when would you say, so for yourself and the business you are running, at what point should someone reach out to you?
So at what point? Now, ideally, if I'm completely honest, ideally, from the moment they think about either a rebrand or setting up a new brand, that's the best place for us to start. But obviously, that very rarely happens, right? I think what we're seeing at the moment with a lot of clients is they're seeing all of this. Some of it is noise, let's face it, about AI, about visibility. And then they're coming to us and saying, okay, we really need to work on our GEO without really necessarily understanding what GEO means, or they know that they have to do something with AI, or they have to do something with showing up more on LLMs. And that's when they come to us. And that's absolutely fine. If they come to us at that stage, there's no right or wrong time to come to us, actually, because we can make it work. But if they come to us at that stage, most of the time, these brands will already have some kind of an idea of who they are, who their audience is. I think that is really, really important. It's really important for us to work with brands who, even if they haven't established it on paper, they have a good sense of what it is they're trying to achieve and who for. What do they want to be known for? And then what happens is we'll take a look at their brand, their copy, their messaging, everything that they're doing. And if we feel that the brand side of things, we need to set a strong foundation for that, they need support with that, then we will do that first. And then we will embed a GEO strategy into that. And I think one of the most important things that I really want people to take away from our conversation today, because we've spoken about AI visibility and story, I think the most important thing to remember is you can't really have one without the other, not successfully anyway. In order for your GEO strategy to work successfully, it's really important for you to have the foundations of your brand set. That starts with story, with branding, with design. Once you have those foundations set, then you are all ready to go to optimize for AI visibility. So yeah, maybe not there's no right or wrong time to come to us. I think as long as brands have an idea of where they want to go, that's usually good enough for us.
And how would you explain to people that might be listening to this, like what's GEO? Because there's a lot of LLMs, there's GEO, PPC, SEO. There's always an acronym somewhere.
Okay. Yeah.
If you explain it not in an idiot's guide, but in the simplest terms, that actually this is what GEO is. Like, how would you explain that to someone?
I think a lot of people are still wondering the same. So GEO stands for Generative Engine Optimisation, and it's the practice of optimizing your copy that you use for your brand so that it is visible across large language models, LLM tools. So GEO in practice looks like LLM tools citing your brands in the right way, because remember, they can also cite your brands in the wrong way. They can also negatively cite you. They can say bad things about you too, or they could say incorrect things about you. So you want them to speak about you in the right way, in the right context, to the right people, and at the right time. That's really what GEO is.
And it's like, so it's fast moving, isn't it? So where do you see, we'll sort of finish up now, but it's like, where do you see AI taking us? There's a lot of panic at the minute. It's like all of a sudden people are going to be booking the holidays straight through ChatGPT, which I'm not sure anyone is, because if I've got I did a post the other day. It's like, if I've got a £3,000 holiday to book, it's like, I ain't trusting it to AI. It's like, I'm looking at websites, I'm doing my due diligence. It's like, or whatever it is.
Yes.
So where do you see, like, do you see us ending up there? And if so, how quickly do you think? And what do you think is going to be the key thing that separates brands when they're doing their geo strategy?
I'm with you, Dave. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't think people are going to be booking big holidays and spending thousands of pounds based just off the back of a conversation with ChatGPT alone. However, I do see, and this is already happening, more people having conversations about potential trips with LLMs in terms of, we're seeing a lot of comparative conversations. So, when people want to compare one city, one destination to another destination, one hotel to another hotel, one brand to another brand. And when it comes to asking specific questions like car parking, accessibility, food, options and things like that. And I think what LLMs do and what that conversation with ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini does is it warms your guests up. It gets them into the right sort of booking mindset. And then they will probably, and I'm sure you feel the same, then they will probably go and check out the website, check out the verification if there is any, see if they can actually trust this brand. So your website and everything else will still absolutely incredibly important. But if LLMs can get them there to those booking pages, then you want to make sure you're having the right conversations with them. So I think that will continue. I'm even noticing it in my own behavior when I have sort of day-to-day questions, maybe not so much for hard research, if I'm honest, but if I want to look up a recipe, if I just want quick answers, I want to find out a little bit about brand, I will go to Claude first. But then I will also go to, the website or Google just to check if those answers appease me.
Yeah, it's an interesting way like people are using things. It's like, and I think there's always like I said, everyone thinks it's going to take over straight away, and all that. But we do it even with our holidays. Like we knew where we wanted to go. That's like, right, what's available on Booking.com, then what their website's like, where is, yeah. But I guess the real opportunity then, like just listening to what you're saying there, and I was, my brain sort of ticking as you're saying, it's like there's a real opportunity with AI, I would suggest, for actually unknown brands to chip away at the bigger boys. And I think probably if you're a bigger brand, there's probably more at risk to lose to AI than there is, because, like I say, all of those things. If you're looking to stay, let's say you're planning a special trip to the Dorchester or something special, and it's like, actually, these are alternatives which actually may not cost as much, will get you in the ballpark of the luxury again, or what the service that you want, and actually, so I think there's for those smaller independent brands, I think there's a real opportunity to kick those bigger brands a bit.
I agree completely. I love that point so much. I think the smaller independent brands have a massive opportunity to compete with the larger, well-known brands. And I think one of the most common questions I see is, okay, why do we need to show up in AI when everybody knows who we are anyway? Like the Dorchester, for example, we don't need to be mentioned. I mean, it's important for both. With the smaller independent brands, as you say, it's where those comparative questions take place. It's where guests go in for more information, more detail, more nuance. And it is happening. One thing that we have seen through a lot of research that has already taken place is that traffic that comes from LLMs tends to convert more than anything else. So that's something we know. So it is important to think about your GEO strategy. And even for the larger brands who think that they don't need to be mentioned because everybody knows about them anyway, they can use AI visibility for different reasons. So, for example, if somebody's thinking of booking with a larger, well-known brand, hotel brand for 2 nights, then a conversation with an LLM can take that 2 night stay to a 4 or a 5 night stay, providing that the LLM is giving it the correct context and answer. So there's definitely an opportunity. And we're definitely seeing a rise in people using LLMs. I think the key thing that we're both saying here is that yes, absolutely work on your AI visibility, but don't forget everything else, the foundations. Because a lot of people are also saying to us, oh, we did all of this work on our SEO and suddenly it's not relevant anymore and our website's not relevant anymore. That's obviously not true. If anything, these people are better positioned for this next shift.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I totally agree. And I think those conversations people are having when you compare, say, ChatGPT against Google. So whereas Google, I might be going for weekend break in Somerset, whereas actually which is great if I know what I want. That's a great way, and I can obviously as marketers we target that with SEO, Google ads, whatever we want to do. But when you've had that conversation with a bot, or albeit someone echoing or mirroring back what you're doing, but I say it's deeper, isn't it? It's like I'm looking for something in there. I want to do this. And I don't think you can do that anywhere else at the minute.
No, you can't. Yeah. People feel seen. It's bizarre, isn't it? I was watching a documentary the other day about people, and I know this is an extreme example, but people marrying their GPTs and, having like relationships with them. And this is happening, it sounds so bizarre, but people are feeling seen and heard and understood. And look at the trend that was popping off a couple of weeks ago. This is what GPT thinks about me and my work. It's like we've put this value, this immense value on how ChatGPT sees us. It's crazy and it means a lot to us. And I think that's really interesting. It's a really interesting insight into human psychology,
Yeah, I'd love to speak to someone, a psychologist, on that a bit more, because it's almost that. I guess as humans, we're all seeking, and again, it ties back to the story as well. I'm not going totally off the piece, but it's like actually it's that emotion, isn't it? It's like I want to be heard. I want to feel like someone's got my back. And the good thing with like ChatGPT is its default result is like everything's a great question, isn't it?
It's so funny. That's a great idea,
Oh, that's brilliant. What we could do is, yeah.
It's so funny, but it's amazing because that seems to be giving people that dopamine hits that they're. So yeah, and I think for that reason, going back to your earlier question, people will continue using LLMs because LLMs make them feel good. It's so crazy.
Okay, they make me feel good. Rarely argue with me. If they do, they always suggest something.
Exactly. My ChatGPT is nice to me. I mean, I've named mine Soul, my GPT. And yeah, I guess on some level, I do see Soul as almost like an apprentice. I mean, I don't want to marry him anytime soon, but yeah, it's like an apprentice, maybe. Yeah.
Until we get the bot in the house, and it's like, until they put the washing on, I won't marry them.
Yeah, maybe.
It is a crazy thing. Thank you for that. I feel like we could keep talking about this, but I'm gonna end things.
Thank you.
Because I think there's some real good value in there. It's great to hear what you're doing. It's great to have those conversations on that. So, if someone's looking to get in touch with you, where do they need to find you? Where do they need to hunt you down?
The easiest and quickest way to do it is probably find me on LinkedIn, Neely Khan. There's not many Neely Khans on LinkedIn. We do have a website and such. I can share the links with you, but LinkedIn is definitely the best way to go.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time. Really enjoyed that. And hopefully people will be contacting you to talk about more stuff.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you for watching the Check In and Chat podcast. If you like this episode, remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on any further episodes.